Hey folks, just want to do a quick video on a project that I'm working on. This is I did this demo at our monthly club meeting in Little Rock a couple months ago on working with Aves Epoxy Sculpt, Part A, Part B Epoxy Sculpt. But I want to kind of go into it a little further. I'm working on this is a project that I've been working on. It's a master for a resin aftermarket company. It's a top for a M1078 medium tactical truck with all sides rolled up and everything. But I need to make this thing thicker because can't really tell it on here, but the top, where you barely see the dark spots in it, that's the putty on the opposite side. So it's pretty thin. It's probably, I don't know, a couple centimeters, maybe a centimeter thick. It's too thin to really cast reliably, so we're going to thicken it up. So I've got, and to do that, I'm going to put panels of Aves, I'm going to roll it out and put panels of Aves in here and blend it in, while also maintaining the bar structure underneath it. So to start with, we're going to take our two parts of Aves, which I've already pushed them together. They're about the size of a marble. I've got some water back here that take it and just knead it together real good. And I've prepared some talcum powder and some glass here to roll it on. Make sure the glass is clean and slick, because any little bump or grit or anything will get transferred into the putty as you roll it out. So you make sure, I usually take a straight razor blade and clean the glass each session that I'll do this, because this is basically, when I'm doing something like this or working on one particular project like this, I basically get one session a day because of the drying time. Maybe two if I do one in the morning and one in the evening. But for the most part, I like to just wait overnight before I start messing with anything, especially working on these thin pieces, and they're actually having to hold up their own weight. So generally I like to be careful. So I'm gonna knead this just a bit, and I haven't introduced any talcum powder yet. I got a tub of water back here behind the camera that I'm dipping this in to keep my fingers from sticking to it, and it's just about kneaded enough. Like I said, I did this demo a couple of months ago, but I wanted to show a little bit more practical application. So, all right, so roll it into a ball, kind of mash it just a little bit. It's just a little bit like making your own pizza crust. So I just kind of get it mashed out just a little bit. I use a piece of aluminum tubing, and this needs to be cleaned as well. Got some dried chunks on here. And like I said, this sort of thing will transfer. Sand those off real quick. Just using a coarse sanding stick to sand those chunks off. They will transfer into the putty as well. So we want to keep everything as smooth and clean as possible. Probably should have done that ahead of time. But anyway, so we got our piece of aluminum here. It's already got talcum powder on it, but you can take some and put on it. So we take it. We just gently, I'm not adding a lot of pressure. It's mostly the pressure of the weight of the bar in my hands. And I roll it a couple times each direction, and I flip it. Roll it a couple times each direction and flip it. And the reason why I'm flipping it is not only to keep the thickness even, but it's also to make sure if you just sit there and just roll it out on one side, it mashes the talcum powder up from underneath it, and it will be stuck to the glass when you go to pick it up later. So at this point, it's rolled out relatively thin and even, and it's got a lot of powder on the sides of it, so we don't need all of this. We need in order to get it thin, we need all of this away, because with the powder on here, the roller just compresses the powder and makes it so it won't get really thin. So now we're just rolling the putty, and I got to roll this out pretty good because I need a pretty decent sized piece, but I also need some thickness. I may have to do this in a couple of pieces, so not a huge deal. And I'm rolling it more this way than I am this way because I need the length out of it. And I'm gonna take my blade here, lift up the end, get a little bit more powder on it. Like I said, this is probably going to be about as thin as I want to get this, because I need the thickness. So see how thick it is. Because I can go out a little thinner. The important thing is to just continuously keep it moving. Don't just press in one place or you'll put a big dent in it, and flip it fairly often to make sure that it's not sticking to the glass. Now, if I was doing something that wasn't going to be cast later, I would do it much thinner than this, than what I'm going to do right here. But in the interest of being able to mass produce this stuff, we got to make some concessions. So I'll take a blade, or take a straight edge rather, and you wouldn't think so, but your blade needs to be sharp, because if it's dull, it will drag the putty. I'd actually be able to get that all in one piece. I'll roll that out just a little bit more that direction. Take the blade. Yeah, you don't want, I think that's going to be just about exactly the size I need. How about that? And when you're doing multi-piece things like that, you can't make this all in one piece, obviously. This is many different pieces went into this. There's 2 layers of putty for the top, the front edge, the front flap, which you can't really see. The front edge of it here is a separate piece. Each one of these flaps is a separate piece. There's also another part. This is actually the front wall that goes on it like this, was made as a separate piece and then removed. And this is also 2 layers of putty, and you can see it's relatively thin. So just got to be careful, work slow, think slow. Take a soft brush and get rid of the powder that's on the surface. Now this putty is completely saturated with talcum powder right now. So to get it to adhere to anything, because it really won't on its own because it's got too much powder in it, we're going to wet the surface just a little bit. And again, I'm going to go to my old ragged brush back here. Just take some water and wet down the inside of this which will help it adhere. Otherwise it won't, and it probably will need to be glued down anyway after the fact. And you can use capillary action to glue pieces of this stuff together with super glue. Works pretty good. So we're going to take our sheet here, which is nice and thin. I'll lay that in here. We're going to take, so I'm trying to keep my hands out of the way, but it's going to be tough. Lift that up. So this is kind of where we're at right now. Like I said, it's probably not quite big enough to do the entire inside. And what I'm going to do is take this brush and just tap, which defines the bars that are already in there. And I'm just working my way around the thing, just pressing, just very, very slightly. And I got a torn spot right there, but I'm not worried about that. I'll fix that later. If I get this putty pushed down tight enough, I won't have to worry about trimming around it, because it will be the Aves will conform tight enough to where it will probably look okay, just like it is. Something like this is going to be a compromise when you're doing it for mass production. You got to make some concessions, and in this case, being able to cast it successfully and cleanly is critical. So these bars are going to be quite a bit thicker probably than they would be if I don't trim around them. And I haven't really decided just yet, but that's going to be if I don't, that's going to be a concession made for ease of castability, which is, like I said, really critical. Basically what we did here was add a thickness of about 4, maybe 5 sheets of notebook paper thick. You know what, I'm gonna go ahead and trim. I'm gonna go ahead and trim the edges out. And like I said, you need a really sharp knife to do this. Where's my other one at? There it is. You need a really sharp knife to do this, and work slow. the bars here, like we just said just a minute ago. I was trying to decide whether or not I was just going to leave them like this or trim them out, but they were thicker than, with the putty over them, they were thicker than what I really wanted, so we're going to trim them. Not a big deal. And then there's a, see, there's a little ridge right there where I cut it, and we're just going to press that down in there with with a dry brush. And this brush has a little bit of talcum powder on it so it doesn't stick, but it's sometimes you have to use water to work with Aves, but in this case just a soft dry paintbrush worked just fine. You don't want anything with a stiff bristles or something that has dried paint in it, because the least bit of hardness that's left in the bristles will leave indentions in the paint. I mean, or in the putty. Stuff is extremely susceptible to contaminants, hard particles and things. It will leave indentions and stuff that you don't want, especially doing something like this where you're making cloth. Okay, so this is kind of what we're doing. You can see there's still some definition to the bar, but the putty is quite a bit thicker now. So rather than bore you with watching this entire thing, we're going to stop here. But that's what we're doing. That's how to roll it out. That's how to work it. And you just again, go smoothly, go slowly. Think before you do anything, and I'll have all your stuff prepared. Another quick tip when you're working with Aves or really any two-part stuff is I use craft sticks to dig it out of each of its parts, but use opposite ends for each part and then throw the stick away, because pretty much any putty, but Aves for sure, is extremely susceptible to being contaminated by its opposite part, and you'll ruin it. So you don't want to do that. It's not cheap, so just be careful, be methodical, and everything's work out good. Later.